The Republican president of the Utah Senate just intervened to loosen the age of consent laws after an adult was charged with having sex with a 13-year-old child. The adult is a relative of Adams. Pedocon. Pedocon theory is a theory like gravity. Holy GOP lawmaker changes law to help relative facing child rape charges. State Senator J. Stewart Adams had a relative charged with raping a 13-year-old, so he rewrote the state's consent laws. Holy dude. For your information, he's a trans people are pedos type, of course. I mean, is that even remotely surprising? You've got to be kidding. Nope. This is how, bro, it doesn't even surprise me one iota at this point. This has been the modus operandi. This has been the method. They always have been doing this. They've been doing this in perpetuity. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of cancel culture. It reminds me of censorship, right? Every dumb online thinks who's doing the cancel culture, who's doing the censorship. Oh, it's the liberals. It's the libtards. Okay. Oh, libtards love cancel culture. It's like there has never been a period in American history where it wasn't the right-wing groups that are most responsible for book burnings. Okay. They literally, even throughout the peak of quote unquote cancel culture in the way that we understand it, like SJW is doing cancel culture shit, like they're doing censorship. They're doing censorship. There has never been a single instance, even throughout the peak of like the 2016 era of wokeness, has there ever been a moment where liberals were actually responsible for more book cancellations and book censorship initiatives than the Republicans were? What do you think CRT was? What do you think the war against woke is? It's cancel culture. It's censorship. They just literally changed the definition of it and they continue with it. And it's the same principle here. These guys will constantly talk about pedophilia, trans people are pedophiles over and over and over again. Meanwhile, there's never been a moment where Republican state legislatures haven't advocated for pedophilia. Child marriages. They love that shit. They have defended it. Okay? It's always projection. Every accusation is a confession. It's always and will always be projection. That's it. These are real demons, bro. Republican Utah State Senate President J. Stewart Adams used his power to change local consent law to help a family member facing charges for raping a 13-year-old girl. Adams' family member, an 18-year-old high school student, was arrested and looking at 4 first-degree felonies. Then Adams stepped in. Before Adams, 18-year-olds who had sex with 13-year-olds in Utah were treated like adults. They legally were and could face first-degree felony charges of child rape. In Utah, anyone under the age of 14 cannot legally consent. Adams successfully changed the law to allow 18-year-olds charged with child rape to be essentially tried as minors if they were enrolled in high school at the time of their crime. Adams' family member was in high school, and since the law was also made retroactive, the 18-year-old went from facing years in prison to accepting a plea deal for reduced charges and no jail time beyond the week he already served after his initial arrest. While Adams swears his family members' charges had nothing to do with his pushing of the rule change, the prosecution, defense, and judge alike all acknowledged that it played a major role in changing the charges. The victim's family was devastated. It was out of nowhere, the middle schooler's mother told the Salt Lake Tribune. I felt like I was punched in the gut. I feel like a law is the law, regardless of who you are. But that wasn't what was going on here, she continued. I feel like Adams' relative just got special treatment, and nobody was going to say anything about it. Yes, bro, middle schooler. She was a middle schooler. She was 13. 13 years old, bro. 13. It's insane, dude. I swear to God, these dudes are going to inevitably make pedophilia legal, by the way. Like, they are, like, the Republican culture warriors are unironically going to simultaneously claim that every, like, trans or gay person is a pedophile while making pedophilia legal, okay? They're going to be like, oh, we're, you know, pedophilia is legal if it's a straight man doing it. Wait. Yeah, as I always say, pedocon theory is a theory like the theory of gravity is a theory. That's where this is heading. GOP gang of pedophiles. True. It's, oh, God. Meanwhile, yeah, speaking of pedophilia, top Trump officials will discuss Epstein strategy at dinner.
Really, the White House and the Justice Department as well on how all of this has been handled. Now, This meeting comes, as we broke yesterday as well, that we know that there was an audio recording made when Blanche went to Florida to sit down and interview Ghislaine Maxwell, of course, Jeffrey Epstein.
2025 is all pedos getting exposed, Diddy, Epstein, and now this. Brother, it doesn't even matter, though. That's the problem. They're literally getting outed, and then the administration is actively defending them and themselves. That's what the craziest part about this is. It's not like they're getting outed, and then people turn around. It's not like they're getting outed and then people turn around and go, oh, dude, this. What the hell? We should not allow this to continue. This is gross misconduct. Like, hello? This is insane. That's not what's happening. That's the expectation, but that's not what's happening. The reality is it's okay. It's okay when we do it.
Associate someone who's been convicted for sex trafficking and other crimes related to him. He interviewed her for more than 10 hours, I'm told. And now the Trump administration, and specifically the Justice Department, is going through digitizing that audio, transcribing it, redacting portions of it. And there's really a question of if, and more so when, they will release that publicly. When I talked to some officials here at the White House, they said that it could be as early as this week that they publish that information. Now, all of this, as well as coming as we're hearing that behind the scenes, there have been some conversations, these officials tell me more preliminary, about having Blanche do a press conference or even appear for a high profile interview, including possibly with Joe Rogan. Again, they say that that is not decided. These discussions have been preliminary, but some of the background, again, is we're seeing kind of the messaging and the strategy over Epstein come into light, particularly at a time when we know that the administration had been very quiet and kind of struggling with how they wanted to move forward with all of this. And I also think one just thing to point out as well about some of these discussions is that they are kind of twofold. There have been people here within the White House who have said, you know, a lot of the Epstein coverage has died down. The story is kind of quiet right now. Why bring this back up and resurface it at a time when they're more successfully kind of avoiding it? But then there's a lot of people as well who believe that this is an opportunity to retake the narrative here, control of that, and also try to control the optics more. So, you know, stay tuned for whatever decision they make, but there'll be a lot of this discussed this evening when they gather at the vice president's residence.
Yeah, it will certainly be interesting to see what comes out of that. Elena Trine at the White House, thank you so much.
Tonight, Vice President Vance will host key members of the administration to discuss whether or not to release the tapes of Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell's interview last month. The Attorney General, FBI Director, and others will attend. At the same time, the House Oversight Committee issued subpoenas to nearly a dozen former officials as it broadens its investigation into the Epstein files. Among those included Bill and Hillary Clinton, and Republicans are zeroing in on the former president for his documented association with Epstein. In a subpoena to Mrs. Clinton, Republicans cited her hiring of Ghislaine Maxwell's nephew in her 2008 presidential campaign. I'm going to bring in the group chat to talk about this. The thing that is confusing about this is if you're trying to tell the world that there's no longer conspiracy, do you have a dinner where you all get in a room privately and talk about it?
Yeah, and talk about what they're going to release and what they're not going to release. This does seem to be exactly the kind of thing that many of the people who will be in the room tonight at this dinner talked about before as the things that government did to hide the Epstein files.
Right, because this tape and this audio recording is of the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, who was Trump's former attorney.
Right, and it includes Kash Patel and J.D. Vance, who both of them spent quite a bit of time talking about releasing the files. So, look, they are now talking about what they are going to release and what they are not going to release. And they're doing it in a meeting that was not announced. Our colleagues reported about it. They found out about it. They're doing it behind closed doors. They're talking about what information there might be other than this, including this recording of the Maxwell interview. This does seem to be, like I said, the kind of thing that would feed the conspiracy thinking of exactly the people who...
Hey, guys, don't assume that we're conspiring in our shady backroom conspiracy meeting, where we are specifically going to talk about how this is not a conspiracy. Again, the admin, for some weird reason, is doing the worst possible things that they could do in this process. But I guess they feel emboldened because there are no repercussions ever. That's it, right? I guess they're thinking like, oh, it's all good because like Ghislaine said Trump innocent. You know, the pedophile sex trafficker herself, who also has perjured in the very same court case where she was found guilty of doing pedophilia sex trafficking. I guess that settles that, you know,
are part of it now.
And the number of names we saw in the subpoena from that House Oversight Committee, attorney generals from both administrations. So whether that's Merrick Garland, Bill Barr, Jeff Sessions, Eric Holder, Alberto Gonzalez from the George Bush years, which I don't know if people got into the Wayback Machine and remember the original sentencing deal that sort of kicked off the scandal out of Florida. That's a lot of names on that screen, Maria, and I hear it's not enough for you.
No, it's not, because these...
But it's bipartisan, at least.
Sure, and that's fine. And let's see if any of them have any additional information. But where's Alex Acosta, who actually was the one who originally negotiated the horrible deal with Epstein?
Yep.
Where is Bondi? Where is Kash Patel, the people who have actually seen the files? If you're going to subpoena Bill Clinton, because of course Republicans are like, oh, well, he was Epstein's friend. Guess who else was Epstein's good friend? Donald Trump. So this, to me, is, again, another distraction and another excuse for them to be able to say, oh, look what we're doing. We really do want transparency. That's just BS. They don't want transparency. They don't want anyone to testify that is going to be able to say that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, period.
With me now, former senior advisor for the Trump-Vance campaign, Brian Lanza, and senior advisor of our Republican Legacy Initiative, Rena Shah. Welcome to you both. Rena, you're up first. This meeting that's happening at the vice president's residence, and we've gone through the list of the attendees there. There's maybe going to be a press conference, interview on Joe Rogan with Todd Blanchard being discussed. What do you think? Does this quell the criticism from MAGA world?
Absolutely not. Just to be very frank about where we're at in this timeline, fresh subpoenas, victim statements, and a deepening political divide between the American public and this White House. Something like 90% of Americans, if you're looking at any polling on this, want these files released. That includes 83% of Republicans. How this chorus doesn't continue to get louder, I don't know. And it's all about what's at the core of the matter here. And this fallout really has stemmed from the Trump administration's real crazy reversal on releasing these so-called files, right? This was about them saying, we want transparency, we want accountability on the campaign trail. But hey, when you're sitting there in a position to do it, what's with the silence? What's with the I don't know? And what's with sort of the slow pace to get to a solution? I say this is about victim-centered justice over political gamesmanship. In recent weeks, I've heard Trump talk about wanting to protect innocents. He has a chance to do that right now. Victims aren't pawns in a political chess game, Victor. They're just not. They're the reason we fight for sunlight, and that's why we try to ensure in this country no one is above the law.
Brian, I was going to ask you a question. I'm just watching your facial expression as you're listening to this. What are you thinking?
Listen, I think we're going into 6 weeks about this. I think the MAGA base probably cared about it up until week number 2. And then by week number 3, the MAGA base sort of moved on. My phones were blown.
Okay, bro. Yeah, they moved on. Nobody cares about Epstein. Come on. It's just, they don't care. This is maximalist copium. Expert level wish casting here from former senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign.